Hi, I'm Carrington Snow, and welcome to my first YouTube video. So, a little bit about me. I've been into photography for about a decade now, but it's really only been the last couple years that I got into film once I moved to Washington, D.C., and met a couple other local film photographers. I'm an engineer by day, and so I'm kind of interested in the technical elements of photography. So you'll see on my channel, I cover, the mechanics of different cameras, how to use them, and then other things like scanning and developing film at home. But today, we're going to look at the best introduction to medium format, in my opinion, and that is the Yashica-Mat EM TLR. And so it's a TLR, it's a twin lens reflex camera. And like all TLRs, it takes a 6x6 centimeter negative on 120 film. And it was produced in 1964. Yashica made quite a few different TLRs from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and this is the EM, the exposure meter version, and so it has a built-in light meter. It has a selenium cell, so it doesn't take batteries, it doesn't require any kind of other electronics that could go bad. It's still accurate to today, and I use it exactly the way it is, without another handheld meter. It was my first medium format camera. I purchased it at a flea market for like $100, and still today you can find them on eBay and Facebook Marketplace for around the same price. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at the camera and see how it works. Okay, so here is the Yashica-Mat EM. And like I mentioned before, it is a TLR, or a twin lens reflex. And so you can see both the lenses right here, stacked one on top of another. The top one is considered the viewing lens, while the bottom one is actually the taking lens. So if you look from the side, the top lens lets light in. It hits a mirror that's actually inside the camera. And then that is directed up through the waist level finder right here. So you actually look through the top, and then you're looking out the viewing lens right on top. The bottom lens lets light straight through the camera and then hits the film plane right in the back. Both lenses are 80 millimeters, and the bottom lens is an f3.5. The top is an f3.2. So it actually lets a little bit more light in to give you a brighter viewfinder. So up top is the exposure meter. It's actually this part right here. So if you were to cover it, you'd actually be blocking the light right there. And then the readout is right up on top here, and we'll get to that in just a second. The shutter release is in the bottom left corner down here, and there's no lock. There's no hookup for a remote shutter release. So is what it is. And then in the upper right corner is the flash sync port right up here. And then you can select the type of flash, either an X or an M right there. The self-timer is down at the bottom, and that's kind of nice since you don't have that remote shutter release. You can use that instead. And then on the left side of the camera, you have your focusing mechanism. So this actually moves the entire lens apparatus forward and back, and that's how you achieve your focus. It focuses pretty closely, closer than a rangefinder, not as close as like a Bellows, RB67 or something else. And then on the opposite side, you have your film advanced winder. So over here, you'd unstow it, give it a good wind, and then you usually come back around 180 degrees and then stow it back here. Your film window right here will tell you how many exposures or what exposure you're on right at the top right there. And then let's go ahead and look at the top. So on the top of the camera, you can see the exposure meter. And as light comes in, this red dial here moves. As I put my finger in front of it, you can see it responds. Okay, so before I start metering, I would set my film speed using this little dial right on top. The fastest it can set to is ISO 400. So I'm going to go ahead and set my speed to about ISO 200. Next thing I do is I would use this dial on the side of the exposure meter to move this green needle to line up with the red needle of the exposure. Now I can determine my exposure. So here we can do about F4 at 2/50th of a second. That's how you'd meter a scene. If there was less light coming in, say it was all the way down here, I would move my needle down. Right, I move my needle down, and now it'd be F4 at the 60th or something something lower. So it actually works really well. I use it all the time. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. So to set the shutter speed and the aperture on the Yachica-Mat EM, you use these two dials that reside between the viewing lens and the taking lens. The left dial controls the aperture going from f22 all the way down to f3.5. And then the right controls the shutter speed with a bulb mode, then 1 second, all the way up to 1/500th of a second. And what's nice about this is it is a leaf shutter, so all of these shutter speeds sync with the flash. And finally, on the top of the camera, we have the waist level finder right here. And to open it up, just kind of grab it from the back edge here, flicks up. And then on the inside, you can see the ground glass. It has some nice some frame lines on there, and that's super helpful whenever you're trying to compose your shot. Waist level finders, whenever you look through the top, they are flipped left and right, and so it can be a little bit disorienting whenever you're first using them, especially not only moving this way, but then in the roll. It's kind of tricky, so having those frame lines right there really, really helps. To open the magnifier, push on the Yashica logo right here, pops open, and then you have your magnifier right there. And that's really, really helpful for achieving that critical focus. So let's go ahead and pop this back away, and let's load up some film. So let's flip the camera over, and you'll see that there's a bottom silver dial here, and we're going to turn that counterclockwise. That'll move this little lever right here, which keeps the back closed. It'll move up, and then it'll pop open. And the whole back swings open. Another little bit about this. This is where the kind of standard 1/4-20 is for a tripod. I've already moved the take-up spool from the bottom up to the top, and all you do is use these little side tabs, pull them out, insert your roll in, and then they'll click in really nice. So let's go ahead and put the film in the bottom. Today we're loading up some Fuji 400H. So we're going to insert the film here, pull this little side tab out. Film comes in, and it just inserts in there really nicely. Pull the paper side out and around, and we're going to insert the little leader right here into the take-up spool. Just like that. And go ahead and use the advancing lever over here to kind of help the film go right around. And we're going to keep advancing. Keep advancing. There we go. Keep going until the start line matches up with these two red arrows on either side. Once you've done that, take the back, close it up, take the bottom dial, turn to close. This little catch down here will secure the back, and then use the winder to wind until it stops. There we go, it stopped. And then rotate 180 degrees, and you're locked. If you look right here, it says 1, and we are ready to shoot. I'm not going to shoot any right now, but let me show you some pictures I have actually taken with this exact Yachica-Mat EM. So now that I've gone through the history and the mechanics of the Yashica-Mat EM, I'm going to tell you why I believe it's the best introduction to medium format. Most of it resides in the fact that it's small, compact, lightweight. I really think it's the best travel and hiking camera that there is around for medium format. Getting 12 shots to a roll is awesome. You know, it's mechanical. The exposure meter doesn't require any batteries. It does take a little bit of getting used to, a little bit of fiddling, you know, here and there, but that's what this camera is kind of all about, the fiddling. I would recommend that if you're shooting kind of towards the sun to kind of shade the exposure meter from that sun, help give a little more accurate reading. But besides that, you know, the meter's great on it. The lens is sharp. It definitely does its job. You know, it's not an f2.8 lens. You're not going to get that real creamy bokeh out of it. 3.5, you'll get a little bit of a depth of field, but it's not anything crazy. But it's totally sharp, and it's a huge step up from 35 millimeter. You know, 6x6 negative is huge compared to 35. A lot of things I don't love about the camera mostly revolve around the shutter. It has a long throw to it, and so it really takes a little bit of getting used to. There's not a real satisfying tactile click whenever the leaf shutter is engaged. So you kind of have to rely on the sound of the shutter, and that is nice. It has quite a satisfying click sound to it, but it's pretty faint, especially whenever you're outside, outdoorsy, you're hiking. It's pretty hard to even hear that at all. So I usually end up kind of cranking the camera one time after taking a picture to make sure it actually took one at all. So that's not great. The lack of shutter release, cable mount, it's not a deal breaker, but it would be nice to have. I would love if it locked. A travel camera, you have it on your side, you're hiking, you're walking with it. Where this shutter release is, it easily bumps against your side, and you get those pictures of the ground, get those pictures of your leg, and with only 12 shots a roll, it's not really all that great. So what I end up doing is I'll take my picture, I won't advance it like I do in basically every other camera, and I'll only wait to advance it right before I go to take my next shot. So I'll advance it, bam, and then take the next one, and that's kept me from those unintended shots. The viewfinder isn't all that bright. So I wouldn't use it for a bunch of indoor photography, but outdoors it's plenty fine. The magnifier works really well, but for $100, I don't think you can beat it. I think it's a great step up from 35 millimeter, and it's a great hiking camera. So in the next video, I'm going to take you to Shenandoah, where I take a couple of pictures with it, and yeah. So keep shooting, and I'll see you in the next one.